What's going on, everybody? My name is John Stamper and super excited to kick off this 3-part Spear Education Learning Series. Love the creative name. It is what keeps you up at night. So the team at Spear Education knows and understands when you're a dental practice, there's all kinds of things going on. And odds are, in challenging times, or even if you're just, trying to grow a very productive practice, like there are going to be some things that keep you up at night. And so we wanted to take some time with some practices out there that are actually doing things on a weekly basis to help move their practice forward. And we thought it'd be very beneficial to bring them on with some of these individual topics in an effort to move this 3-part learning series forward. All right. So today's first episode is staffing, improving team productivity. And I'm sure when I say the word staffing, everybody's like, oh my gosh, it can go in 1,000 different directions. So we wanted to bring on the team from Agnini Dental in Florida. I have with me today Dr. Andrew Agnini, as well as Melissa Lusk, who is the practice manager. How are you guys doing? Happy Friday.
Hey, John. Thanks for having us.
Doing great. TGIF, right?
Yes.
TGIF. It is so nice to have the both of you, and I'm really excited. We're just going to have a conversation about, again, what you guys are doing in your practice, like how you've been utilizing, some of the Spear practice solution ideas and tips and things like that and the resources. So before we get started, I'd love to have you share a little bit about yourself, the practice, and all that good stuff.
John, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. So we're coming to you from Central Florida. I always say sunny Central Florida, a town called Lakeland. So if you put a pin on the map, you're pretty much right in the center of the state, which is where we are, right in between Tampa and Orlando. So it's a great town. Florida native, pretty much grew up here in Lakeland. We've got, as far as the population goes, we've got some growing business. I know that our county has been ranked as one of the, biggest population growth here in the last couple of years. So it's been really good. So as far as our practice goes, we've got 2 locations here in Lakeland, divided by maybe 3 miles. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in our town, it's kind of 2 different areas there. We run a busy advanced general practice with myself, my father, who is the founder, who's practiced here since the late 70s. And we've got 2 great associates, a great hygiene department, and we've opened our eyes, blinked our eyes, and we've become, quite a big practice. So not necessarily by intention, but that's what it's grown into. So we live in a great area. It's just a wonderful thing.
We have about 40 members to our practice.
40. I love that. All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say, kudos to the 2 of you and Dr. Drew, to have Melissa here, right? I mean, I think as in order to have the practice that you have and the growth that you've had, I'm sure you cannot do that, without your team. And so I think it says a lot about you and the team there, to have the both of you, here today to kind of talk about these topics, but from each of your perspectives, right? So Drew, from yours, as the practicing dentist there, and then Melissa, as the practice manager. So the first thing I'd love to hop into is the hygiene shortage. And, and I say hygiene, but really what I mean is staffing shortage in general. I know we hear a lot about hygiene and so on and so forth, but we're going to speak general today. So Melissa, I wanted to start with you. Like, how has this impacted what you do in the practice, on the both the talk of shortage out there and then really how you're dealing with it on a daily basis?
So it's been an incredible learning experience, John. We've had to utilize a lot of patience, do things where we have to think outside of the box a little bit. We've moved by force, basically, not necessarily by choice, but we've, because of our hygiene shortage, we've had to move into temporary staffing measures to keep our patients treated and to keep our schedules full. So it's really been kind of a very challenging process.
And Drew, I'm sure a lot of people watching this after, having you share the growth that you've had and especially the growth there, in the city that you're in,
Right.
They're probably thinking of themselves, staffing short is what it's hard to find people. But what I wanted to ask you is there's another side to this, and that is like finding a way to be able to find the team members that you need in a competitive market. So I'd love to have you share like what are some tips and some things that you have done in order to be able to do that, because there's challenges there as well, I'm sure.
Oh, tremendous challenges. To go back, what you said a minute ago about running a dental office in general, whether it's our practice here or wherever, you have to have the team. You have to have I don't want to use the word right people, but you have to have the people that you get along with, that you trust to make it happen. And so Missy we've worked together now for going on 20 years almost, and so it's clutch to have that camaraderie. I know that doesn't happen a lot in dentistry. We practice in a bubble a lot of times, and you as a dentist, as a solo dentist, or even if you're with other people, you think that things happening to you are only happening to you, and that's how you always feel in times of stress. It was a little comforting to know that as we got out and you talk to your dental friends, or you go to a meeting and by the way, it's like, I don't have a hygienist either, or I'm down to two clinical team members. It quickly became apparent that this wasn't necessarily a local issue, but it was something happening on a national scale. So first off, in my opinion, it happened fairly quickly, to where at first it was like, oh, we've lost this person, oh, we've lost that person, and oh, it's a little slow with resumes, that type of thing. Then it became okay, this is getting a little tight. Then it became what are we going to do kind of thing. So there's lots of emotions that go along with that, and the biggest thing that I can see, that the kind of take home message in general, is office culture and utilizing who you have on hand right now, and sometimes even tailoring your normal workflow into the environment that you have, and doing your best to keep a positive attitude that this may not be permanent, but it is the way it is right now. And so those are kind of some of the general aspects. I know we can go into a little more detail about how we did that, but that's this whole thing is an emotional issue, especially for obviously for the doctor, but also for the team that's really taking the brunt of having less people, less bodies on the ground to help with that day-to-day activity.
Yeah, and Melissa, I learned a long time ago, sometimes the first, step of progress and trying to, manage through or navigate through challenging times is acceptance, right? So, you have to accept, as you guys have done, those emotions, Drew, that you talked about. And then there's the good old Monday morning, right? So you're here, there's patients that need to be served, and you're looking down at your team in the huddle, and they're looking back at you and they're like, all right, Melissa, motivate us, keep us going. We're doing more with less, or what have you. So I would love to have you share what you have done, how you have been able to dig deep, as the practice manager, to find, some motivation to not only get them through Monday, but then Wednesday and the following week and all of that. So what are some of the things that you've done along those lines?
So I think one of the foundational things that we've done is kept the communication rolling with the staff. So we've been able to tailor our schedules, to where we're not extremely overworked and tired and grumpy and irritable. We've been able to have weekly spear meetings, which helps keep us all motivated, rah, rah, we made it through. What can we do differently? What do we have to look forward to next week? We've also, utilized some flexible scheduling with the staff. So each team has a team leader, and they are responsible for meeting the needs of their team along with their doctor. And so if there are some needs of staff members where they may need to leave early one day, or come in late to accommodate their scheduling, well, then the team all joins together and makes that happen, and that reduces the stress on the team members as well. Then we do a lot of just our normal team building, our rewards, our recognition, things like that that keep them motivated.
And
John,
along those, yeah, Drew, yeah, please go ahead.
to hit on that point, in our practice, we were, I guess, back in 2000. So I think it's been about 18 months now that we've, been quote short on, mainly hygiene. And we run 5 full-time hygienists in our practice. There was a time they were down to 3 and even 2.5 for a little bit. And I mean, talk about stress and keeping yourself up at night. We preach and try to motivate patients on the hygiene appointment and how important the hygiene in your recare is. And then all of a sudden it's like, we've got nobody to see them. And there was a point in time when, we didn't even have a resume for 2 months. I mean, not even like a resume at all into the practice. Yeah, maybe longer. So, it became very challenging. Missy made a great point is, communication, okay, to the team, obviously, but also to the patients. I did my best to keep in touch with, through whatever practice management software you have, or if you have, things that can reach out with a newsletter or something like this, just say, hey, listen, this is where we're at. We don't want anybody into the practice. We want to make sure that who we're choosing to be here is going to be somebody that's going to serve you according to the culture and what our goals are in the practice. But even to that aspect, there's really just nobody there. And so we're doing our best. Please be patient with us if you get an appointment changed, or if you see a different provider, or if you have to, maybe push your hygiene out to 8 months or 10 months to the ones that maybe can do that. So, it's a lot of work, but you have to just learn to get a little flexible with it.
Yeah. And I know it was really important, for the Spear Education team to talk about these real life examples, because I think, like you said, Drew, there's an element of like trying to figure it out day to day. And then there's an element of making sure that you're upholding your, standard of care, what's important to you and the clinical team there to make sure that, the patients that are coming and then the future patients that are going to come continue, to the practice, that you're able to uphold that. And so we're all human, as you know, right? And so like when our energy dips or when we're going through challenging times, it just feels like it's even that much harder, right, to keep that high standard. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I know for a lot of practice owners and teams, they're watching this and they're saying, it's probably good for them to hear that, like you said, when you connect with other colleagues, you're like, you can take a little bit of a deep breath. You're like, okay, like they're facing that, like this is a real thing. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's so important.
Yeah. And my thing that makes me feel better is that, I feel that, humans are innately forgiving. And so if you communicate well with them and taking that to the patient base, if you're open with them about, this is where we are, this is the reality of our situation right now, I find that they're much more amenable to, some scheduling issues or changes or things to work with you, because they do feel the stress. They feel the chaos when they come in, the energy, I guess, if you will, of the practice. If you're down 2 administrative staff, or if you're down 3 hygienists, if they don't know what's going on, they're going to come up with the conclusion in their head. Okay. They're going to, whatever story that may be. So, that's my thing, is that open communication, most of the time, most people are fairly understanding.
Yeah, no question. All right. So you spend all this work on the front end to wait 2 months to get like one resume. And then that, person comes in and, hopefully they're an A+ player. There's someone that it's a good fit for the practice. And then you have the onboarding, right? You're like, oh, wait a minute. We actually have to onboard. We have to make sure that, they're successful in the practice. So Melissa, I want to come back to you on, talking about your onboarding process, but more importantly, like, how important is that? Like, I think about all the work that you do to just attract when you have, a little bit of a shorter, or I should say less people to choose from. And so, as you guys know, if you don't onboard them right and you don't build that success from the onset, you're going to lose them and then you go back to square one. So you all are doing something right in the practice. And I'd love to have you share like what that onboarding and team success process is like.
So, John, I think it comes down to filtering when we're recruiting. We kind of slowed down and without having resumes, to choose from, we've had to be very selective with the resumes that we have. So I do a phone interview first, kind of get to know the candidate, and then if they seem to be a good candidate and we want to welcome them to our practice, we do an interview. Sometimes we have even done a second interview to be sure that we're choosing the right candidates. And that can be hard whenever you are short staffed and you have a position to fill, and you're trying to take your time to find the right candidate. But I do feel like that's very important whenever you're recruiting. As far as onboarding goes, aside from all the paperwork that comes with onboarding an employee, showing them our culture and how we do things here at Agnini Dental is we have what's called team leaders. So each doctor has a specific team leader, or at the administration has a team leader. And so those team leaders are responsible for the buddy system, we call it. So that new hire is going to be trained by the team leader or an appropriate staff member that they have chosen. And they're kind of responsible for their training. We've spent extensive amount of time in creating standard operating procedure manuals where we have pictures and we have, setup outlines. We have, how we do things here at Agnini Dental. And one of the most important things that I feel is beneficial to our new hires is we take 30 to 40 minutes when they're first onboarded to review our core values and our new team member expectations. So every single team member that comes through the door, and then sometimes we review that on a yearly or annual basis. We just go over what our core values are and what is important to Dr. Drew and Dr. Mike and what they've actually built Agnini Dental on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Drew, along those lines, so like we said, you get to the point to where maybe you weren't sleeping and then you find somebody to come in and then you're sleeping again. And then you're worried about, them not staying. And so like, here you go again. So how do you manage that? I mean, obviously Melissa and the team have built a great process and are using some great resources, which we're going to talk about in a second. But yeah, from your perspective as one of the dentists there, like talk about that, the minimizing the turnover piece.
Yeah. So, where do I start? So, we always say that, and I'm sure most offices say this, but we could probably create a reality show pilot that does very well with our practice. So we have lots of really intriguing stories, but I guess you have to come to terms as a doctor owner with, what type of practice do you want to be? As dentists and even though, we have a fairly large, general practice, we're not a huge corporation. We're not a huge company. So you have to come to the mindset that like at some level you can't compete financially, right? It's like, if a hygienist comes in and says, hey, I love your practice. I've heard great things about you, but oh, by the way, I'm going to request $7, $8, $9 an hour more than you've ever paid any hygienist in your practice, or that maybe your veteran hygienist in your practice of 20 years makes. What do you do with that? So you have to come to terms with the fact of, you can't win on the money. You're never going to win on the money in quote unquote a competitive market, because this isn't like something that's crept up over the past decade. This is like something that's happened over the past year. And so you either have two choices. You can roguely increase, salaries, to 15, 20, 30, 40%, which is not feasible. Or you just have to say, we can't compete on the money, but we have other things here that are beneficial. Okay. And that does sound a little airy fairy kind of, but it does mean a lot. Having a stable culture in the practice, having an environment where people want to come to work, having an environment that's safe, for difficult times. Like we were fortunate enough to figure out a way even during COVID where, my thought was I've just spent, $10 10 years cultivating this crew, the last thing I want to do is send them out again into the market so they can go and work for somebody else. So we did everything that we could to try to keep people here. That's a huge thing, just the job security that, hey, at the flip of a switch, you're not going to be let go. My clinical team leader made a joke. She always jokes about, what does it take to get, quote, fired from Agnini Dental, right? And my point is a lot, because I've trained you a lot, right? And so, I'm going to do everything I can not to let you go, aside from some egregious offense or whatever. So, you have to kind of have that culture mindset, and the mindset of, I'm not ever going to win on the money, competing with maybe a corporate practice, or maybe with even, some people come in who are thinking about getting out of dentistry. We've had a handful of those where they have really competitive offers from non-dental industries, and they don't want to leave. But, I always put myself in their shoes. It's like, if you're getting $3, $4, $5 an hour more, heck, you need to take it. Okay. Because I can't compete on that front. So, as far as, the keeping from the, turnover and things like that, Missy had a good point. I call them my non-negotiable expectations, or the culture of the practice. Those are like your, hey, if you do this and you show up every day, it's going to be really hard for you to get fired from the practice. Okay. And so that's what that's like showing up on time, what I would call the normal stuff, but getting that laid out right at the front end. I feel it gives a little bit of security to, okay, this is an environment where I can grow, I can make some mistakes, and we can learn together.
I think it's such an important message, know who you are and then run with it. And it's probably no secret as to why you've had that team there for a while. And sounds like you've been able to minimize turnover because you're being upfront with them from the beginning. And, very, very admirable to you guys for doing that, because then, as like, this turns from, there's a staffing problem, and it's not that you're not acknowledging it, but the reality is that, like, it may be here and then it might go away a little while, it might come back in 3 to 5 years. But it really sounds like what you guys have done through this is you've learned what works and what doesn't work, and you've stuck to what you want to do. And again, I mean, it's, I think that's awesome. And that kind of leads me to, team building, and some of the things, Melissa, that you're doing in an effort to, keep this team moving forward, and just some of those ideas that you do on a weekly basis with the team.
So we have what's called our GOAT trophy. And of course, GOAT stands for greatest of all time. And we actually have a little goat on the trophy. And we have utilized that trophy to recognize, the greatest of all time player for that particular season. And each staff member that is awarded the GOAT trophy keeps it for a little while until they find another employee who is exceptional at what they do, and then they pass that trophy along. So that's been kind of a fun thing. We, at our weekly spear meetings, we do what we call all stars and celebrations. So if we have a box at each location, and if a patient writes a review, we put that in the box. If a team member notices another team member doing something great or doing something that they want to recognize them for, then we put that into the box. And then once a month, we have a drawing from those entries for a gift card. And so that's been really motivational. We also celebrate birthdays and anniversaries around here. Those are a big thing. We do monthly team outings. So we, for example, today the team is going bowling as a team building thing. So we try to do something like that once a month. And then I think one of the greatest benefits that we offer too is also continuing education. So along with that comes some fun travel, and just kind of keeps the team going and keeps them motivated.
I see where we're going here, Drew, right? We kind of talked about some of the tough things. Now, like, Missy sprinkling in like some travel and some bowling. Like, okay, now we're really getting into why you guys are successful. But no, and it's seriously, and I realize I just called you Missy, so I feel like we're kind of part of the family now. So now we're all friends, right? But seriously, so I want to go back, Drew, to the patient care and upholding this standard of patient care. I know that's important to you and your father and the team and all of that, or what have you. But let's talk about how you see the morale of the team and their energy connecting to making sure that you can uphold that quality of care.
Yeah, great question. So, for one, knowing the team knowing what your goals are is huge, right? So, as the business of dentistry goes, I find there's a lot of practices that don't share a lot of that information. They may not share a lot of the numbers with the team, even though I think that's getting better, in the last few years. But the team has to know what the goal is, obviously. And
Right.
if you're part of Spirit, obviously that's an ingrained kind of thing. Now, in relation to staff shortages and keeping up production and keeping up morale, that's a doctor choice, in my opinion. So you can be, let's say, team focused in a sense, or you could be production focused. And so I've personally chosen the fact of I love working, I love dentistry, and I love working around happy people. so not that I'm willing to take a hit in quote production, but sometimes you just have to get okay with maybe slowing down a little bit. Okay. Say for instance, let's relate this to team morale. If they're down 2 clinical people and we're still, ramming and jamming people and patients, it can get very, very tiresome very quickly. And so you have to come up with something that works in your practice to say, okay, what are we going to do? Blocking the schedule is huge. I hope people are doing that. And then the doctor's role in that is just being the leader, meeting with the team, getting with the team. Don't hide away in your office, in between patients. Kind of walk around, lend a helping hand. Just show them that, hey, we're part of this. We're in this together. I think goes a long way.
And to piggyback off of what Dr. Drew was saying, using schedule blocking and using templates for your schedule, just to kind of keep the productivity going and moving efficiently is really important too. So.
Yeah, that's a good segue, Missy. In this particular case, I feel like cueing the NFL football music, right? Like, because now you guys are going to define the perfect schedule. Does one exist? Right? This is what everybody's watching.
We have the answer to the perfect schedule, John. In our practice.
Good. Yeah, because that's what they're all watching for. They're like, okay, when are they going to talk about the perfect schedule? So here we go. And Drew, I'm coming to you first on this one, right? So, let's talk about that from the doctor's point of view and how you see the importance of scheduling properly.
Ooh, man. How long do we have here? 2 hours, 3 hours? Yeah, talk about this. So in my head, if I look at the let's say journey of Agnini Dental over the past 10 years, I look at it as levels of production. Let's talk strictly productive numbers. And so as a doctor, going from $0 to $4,000 a day, that schedule looks a whole lot different than $3,500 to $6,500 a day. That schedule looks a whole lot different than $6,500 to $8,500, and then $8,500 to $10,000 or $12,000 a day. Okay, those are very different types of scheduling. They all have to center around pre-planning and you telling the schedule what you want it to do. That's the bottom line. So even though there's different levels, I would say it all centers around making sure you have the time to capitalize on opportunity and not getting worried if I block this time, okay, for Thursday and it's Tuesday afternoon and it's still open, that's a conversation you have to work out. But I'm telling you, the mindset there is, we've got this time open. Let's look for an opportunity that's going to fill in that space. The more productive that you get as a practice, or quote bigger as a practice, it doesn't change. You just have to get really, really good at transitioning on the administrative, transitioning on case acceptance, on that type of stuff, because it happens at such a faster pace. and you have to learn how to capitalize that. There's nothing worse on feeling for a provider to have a patient, either a new patient or somebody out of hygiene that is ready to get going with maybe a bigger case that you guys have been discussing, and there's no time for 3 months. And you look at the schedule, and you're well below goal on most of those days. So you have to really tell your schedule what you want it to do, and blocking the time for what I would consider, we call them rock appointments in Spear, and non-rock appointments. Define that for the provider, because that's different. Obviously, a provider that's doing $10,000 a day is going to have a skill set that's different than somebody who's doing, $3,000 or $4,000 a day, because it's very once you break that $8,000-9,000 a day barrier, you do have to get into procedures, that are more value in a sense. It's you can do that with what I would call day-to-day dentistry, but it gets very tiresome very quickly.
So Missy, I feel like the schedule in a dental practice has its own personality. I feel like it's like the most sacred thing in the dental practice, right? It's just like anytime you hear a dental team talk about their schedule, there's a lot of emotion with it when you think about it, because I mean, that's what everything revolves around. So what are some tips, for people that are watching on like what you do and on, to piggyback what Drew said, like on optimizing the schedule in the practice?
So, like we've discussed before, it's definitely with templating your schedule. So, making sure that you have blocks for new patients, making sure you have blocks for high production procedures, and then making sure you have blocks for everything in between. So we have templates, and obviously each doctor works differently. And having a team leader and their team, time these doctors, and they have to listen to their team when they're telling them, no, it really takes you this long to do a procedure like this. But really honing in on getting your schedule template done and timing the doctors with their procedures, so you can kind of predict how your day is going to turn out, and also do production to meet goal.
And don't tell your doctors that you're timing them either, because
absolutely,
dentists tend to be fairly anal and fairly competitive, so they're going to try to blow through that as quick as they can.
I will never forget. Like, this is a lesson I learned years ago, spending time in a dental practice, where we had a training with the team, and both of the doctors were up there, and they were talking about like their approach towards like diagnosing a patient, and like which one would, like which restorative treatment they would do. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, because those two doctors work in the same practice, they obviously are going to treatment plan exactly the same. And of course, I learned that that's rarely the case. It's very difficult. Missy's laughing because it's true. And so like, that's just one example, I think, of team alignment. And that's where I want to go next. Missy, is asking you, Spear Practice Solutions, I know, has been a big resource for you in the practice, but I wanted to have you share with everybody like how helpful it's been in regards to like team alignment and skills and things like that, because that's a real thing. I mean, you're not going to change how people are, how they practice. You just have to find a way to help them align. And so how has those practice solutions helped you?
Again, back to communication and our weekly Spear meetings. Gives us time to talk about things that might be holding us back, or little hiccups that we have, ways that we can improve. I can't tell you enough how important our practice growth partner with Spear, her name is Mandy, for our team, what an incredible asset she has been to us in helping us kind of navigate through some tough times.
Go Mandy.
Yeah, go Mandy. But it really is important for everybody to stay on the same page. And I think we do that by having a regular meeting time and just discussing, ways that we can improve and kind of hitting our obstacles head on, or preventing them even by discussing them and being prepared.
Yeah. And I think from your side, Drew, I mean, I'd love to talk about like those same resources and the practice solutions, all of that. But from your vantage point, how it's helped you, sleep at night, or more importantly, like reduce your stress.
Sure.
There's all kinds of different stressors in the practice. And you mentioned something at the beginning of the conversation, and I'm so glad that you did, which is that, sometimes a lot of times you feel like you're in a bubble, right? And then you wake up and you realize that there's a practice in Texas or a practice in Washington or a practice in Ohio that is dealing with some of the same challenges. And I know that's what Spear has done, is they've helped connect, what's worked for those practices and brought those, to you guys, and you've utilized those. But how has that helped you reduce your stress?
Sure. Practice management. So for one, growth doesn't happen by itself. There may be outliers there where you hear somebody opening a practice and it just explodes. But, and sometimes I think dentists forget that we're, maybe even more so a business, than anything else. And growth does not happen without putting in effort and putting in change and changing behaviors, mostly from the provider or the doctor standpoint. So practice management in general, okay, is, in my opinion, a must. But Spear and SPS, in my opinion, takes it to a whole nother level. For one, if I could just talk for a second, I'm going to brag about them just for a second, is that the ability of their, let's say, online on-demand content is, worth the weight in gold right there. But I find, even talking with my friends, and if I'm at a meeting or wherever, doctors do not meet enough with their team. That's probably my number one thing. Spear and SPS forces you, or else you're just paying for a comfort feeling. It forces you with the content and with the protocols and things like that to meet on a regular basis. And doctors get anxious about not working on a patient. Okay. I would honestly believe that if doctors would work less on patients and meet more with their team and talk, they would be, even maybe double productive to what they are. And so you have to pick a time. And what do doctors want to do, John? Oh, let's come in at 6:30 in the morning, or let's stay till 5:30 at night, to do that, to save the patient time. And my request would be take patient time, okay, away from your schedule, whether it's 45 minutes, whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's 15 minutes. Take time away, because you value that more, okay? The doctors are now paying for that out of being productive. So it motivates, okay, for one, and it's respectful, right? There's very few businesses in this world that, require their team to stay till 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, right? It's like most people are leaving at 5. So as an industry, let's take on that mantra, really. You have teams, have families, people have places to go, things like that. You take the business in the business day. And I can almost guarantee it, you're not going to lose any production, and most likely you're going to gain production from it.
And
Yeah.
And your team will be thankful, and you won't have constant turmoil and turnover, right? Like we talked about before.
Yeah, I'm so glad that both of you mentioned that. And again, I think that's why, Spirit Education was so excited to put this together, because, as the both of you know, like, other practices out there need to hear you share this, because I think in a lot of cases, like you mentioned, Drew, there's the element of, yes, I'd love to do that, but then there's this big gap between how in the heck am I going to figure out a way to do that? And I think the more the practices can hear that, hey, you guys have and had the same challenges that they have, right? So it's not like you're not facing, things that they're not facing, and you have found a way, and it hasn't been easy, and you've had to continue to stay on top of things, but, they need to hear your story, which is so important. And Missy, any last thoughts from you? I think Drew really summed it up with kind of sharing his thoughts and what that's been like, but I just want to have you kind of share some of your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't always been this way. We haven't always done things the way that we do things today. We've gone through tremendous growth. We've kind of been anxious about stepping out and doing things that weren't of the norm to us. One of those being, taking time to incorporate our weekly team meetings during patient hours. It's things like that I think have truly caused us to become unified in our thinking and, cohesiveness, basically, with the team.
John, if I could speak just for a second on that, with we meet weekly. Okay, we see patients every day at 8. So we meet on Thursdays from 7:45 to 8:30, and we have 2 locations. And so the big thing initially was like, well, what are we going to do? We've got a group of people. This isn't like 2 or 3 people, right? This is like 25 people, that are at a different location. And so, we made a decision that was scary to say, we're all going to meet as a group together in one location every Thursday morning. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, even if we don't win on new content or that, they're together, they're talking. The 2 offices don't feel like they're separate offices. We go over the all-stars where they're bragging on each other. We're going celebrating birthdays for 10 or 15 minutes. And so it's a big step, but it's a huge step. And it's financially a lot of money. And I'm talking real world here, John, to my dental friends.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But the value we try to, what do we do for patients? We present monetarily a lot of money to people every single day. Do we really look at that in ourselves? The value of this, the value of consulting, the value of SPS, it pays back multiple dividends. Okay. And so to my dental colleagues out there is, don't be cheap. Take the step. Okay. Step out of that and take a chance. And believe me, you will sleep better at night.
Yeah, I love that he said that, Missy, right? I mean, you and I, we're not going to say that, but Drew can say that. I'm so glad that you did, right? Because they'll be like, the other doctors out there go like, I know. Okay, Drew. Yeah, you're right. You called me out. So, well, listen, I mean, this has been an absolute pleasure. I don't know if I shared this with the both of you, but when I started dentistry 20 years ago, I think one of the very first meetings I went to was a Dr. Frank Spear, like clinical meeting, right? And there was only a couple companies there. And so to see how this company has evolved, and now to hear your story and how, there's resources that Spear Education has put together to help you, solving these problems, it's awesome. And I just want to let everybody know that we're going to, continue this learning series. And so today was a great starting point just to kind of talk about some of the challenges you have and the pain points. The upcoming ones, we're going to do attracting and retaining patients. We're going to talk a little bit about everybody's favorite subject, collections and insurance, on some of these future episodes. Also wanted to let you know that there's a resource. It's the just-in-time resource, HR Staffing, a quick guide to hiring. Finally, I think with this learning series of sleeping well at night, a very creative idea, the Spear team wants to help you in 2024 alleviate a lot of these pain points. And so you're going to see the landing page, the link there. Be sure to go ahead and register to get a free purple pillow for scheduling time to speak with a practice management expert to diagnose your pain points and look at practical solutions. Those purple pillows, those are awesome, right? Yeah. So go ahead, click on that link, set up a time to speak with, one of the practice solutions team members and get yourself that purple pillow. Well, Drew and Missy, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Love talking dentistry, and congratulations to the both of you and the entire practice for the success that you have, and any continued success as you continue to serve your community there in Florida. So
thanks for, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for letting us share.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. And we continue to the next episode. We'll see you then.